and welcome to In the Kitchen with Christ. This is a cooking video for the amateur cook to be able to create some really delicious recipes. Sometimes they're going to be sweet, sometimes they're going to be savory. Today we're going sweet. Today's episode we're making a mint dark chocolate cupcake. It's going to be to die for. It's going to be a nice dark chocolate cupcake with a chocolate ganache filling and mint buttercream frosting on the top. So let's go. Okay, let's start with our list of ingredients. What you're going to need for today's recipe is 2 1/4 cups of flour. I already have it measured out in a separate bowl. You're going to need we're going to need a 1/2 cup of dark chocolate cocoa powder. So we're going to start with that. We'll measure this out, and you're just going to kind of fluff up. Anytime you're using a dry ingredient, you want to kind of fluff it up a little so it's not packed down. And here, we're going to add that to our flour. Okay. And always cover up your containers when you're done with them. That way you don't have an accident. Okay, and then we need baking soda. We need 2 1/4 teaspoons of baking soda. And this is baking soda, not baking powder. You always want to make sure that you use the right ingredient for the recipe that you're making. Baking soda. All right, so we're going to go 1, 2, and 1/4. And we're going to mix all these dry ingredients together in one bowl and get them all incorporated. And then we're going to add 2 1/2 teaspoons of, half a teaspoon of salt. We're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Once we get that in here, we're going to just mix this up. So we're just going to go ahead and mix this up so it's all incorporated. You want to make sure that you get all of this stuff together, especially the baking soda and the salt, because you want to make sure that it's not in just one spot in the cupcake. You want to make sure that it's all mixed in. So, what's nice about mixing the cocoa powder in is you can see when you've done a good job mixing it all together. You won't have any white spots or brown spots. All right, so there's where we're going to go. So there's our cocoa powder and our flour mixed together. We're going to set that aside for right now, and we're going to get to work on our wet ingredients. Now, contrary to what you might think, sugar and brown sugar are considered wet ingredients when you're doing the baking. The sugar is going to melt when it adds in with all the butter or the eggs or milk or anything that you use that is actually a liquid. Your sugar will melt in that, so that's why that goes into your wet ingredients. A little tip, follow the recipe. If it tells you to mix things separately, mix them separately. If it doesn't give you any ingredients orders, you just can dump them in. Those are like dump recipes. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to, in our mixing bowl, we are going to add 2 eggs. But what we're going to do is I'm going to actually mix them in a measuring cup and make sure that I don't have any eggshells or anything in it. So I'm going to go ahead and 1 egg, 2 eggs, and by opening them up into a separate container, that way you can see if you have any shells or if you have a bad egg. The bad eggs don't happen very often, but you do get one once in a while. That would be horrible to ruin your cupcake and all the stuff that you've added so far if you have a bad egg. All right, after that, we are going to put in 1 cup of granulated sugar. And then we're going to add a cup of light brown sugar. And this is an ingredient you do want to pack in. You want to make sure that this gets nice and tight in here. So we're going to mix this in. And we're just going to pack it down a little bit. Keep on going until the container, the measuring cup, is full. One of the tricks to know if you've done enough is when you pour this in the bowl, that it kind of retains the shape of the measuring cup. All right, so we have 1 cup of brown sugar. And now we're going to start the mixer just a little bit and just get a little bit of the 3 ingredients incorporated a little bit. All right, now we're going to add 1 1/4 cup of whole milk. You can also use 2% if you want, or a light cream if you want. Add a little bit of that, mix that a little bit together. And now we are going to add 2/3 a cup of strong brewed coffee or espresso. So a lot of times when I know I'm going to be making cupcakes that call for this, when I make coffee in the morning, I just make a little bit extra and let it sit for a little while. So we have 2/3 of a cup of strong coffee. This is really going to just enhance the chocolate flavor in the recipe. And then we are going to add 1 cup or 2 sticks of melted butter. So go ahead and add that in. We're going to make sure we scrape our bowl because we want to make sure we get the whole cup of butter. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and mix that up. And we are going to have a little bit of a mess, so I'm going to cover this a little bit. So until it gets mixed up a little bit, it might splash. So I'm going to make it so it doesn't splash. There we go. And once this is mixed up and you're pretty confident that everything is pretty much incorporated, we are going to start adding some of our dry ingredients. Now what I'd like to do is just to take a smaller measuring cup and scoop in just a little bit at a time. You don't want to put all of it in all at once because then you'll have a chocolate and flour shower. And I just have a paddle attachment on my mixer here. All right, and we'll just keep on going until everything is in and it's all incorporated. This recipe is going to make 24 cupcakes, which is just about enough to go around. And actually, I'm making these cupcakes tonight for our children and families minister here at the church. Today's his birthday, and also his twin brother Logan's birthday. They are 30 years old today. So we have our Bible study tonight, so I thought that this would be nice to celebrate Kyle's birthday at Bible study with these delicious cupcakes. And I have to tell you, he's very excited. All right, so we have all of our dry ingredients mixed in there. Now I'm going to stop mixing for a second and I'm going to scrape down the bowl because some of the flour gets up on the sides and you want to make sure that everything is mixed in really nice and well. Get in the bottom. Give this another mix. I'm going to turn it up a little bit because we want to get a little bit of air into this so that our cupcakes are nice and puffy. And it's always nice to clean up a little bit as you go, that way you don't have a big mess at the end. You want to look to make sure there's no lumps or anything like that in there. And this looks pretty good and it smells divine. I wish you had smell-o-vision because it smells really good. It smells like chocolate. All right. So now I'm going to take this and we're going to clean off the spatula. We want to make sure that we don't waste any of this goodness. And that's the thing too. Always scrape your bowls down. Always scrape your beaters. That way that you don't lose any of this, because if you just take this out, that's a couple bites of cupcake, and nobody wants to lose that. So let me show you what we have here. So we have a nice thick batter. Doesn't that look good? All right, so also no licking the beaters when you're doing this. There'll be opportunity for that later. There's raw egg in this and flour that's not cooked, so you want to make sure that you're not licking the beaters or taking samples of this, because the raw eggs in the flour, well, the raw eggs can cause salmonella, and the flour, uncooked flour, can have traces of E. coli in it. So we don't want anybody getting sick. All right, so we have this all nice and mixed. So now what I'm gonna do is I have prepared our cupcake pan with 24 liners. If you don't have cupcake liners, you can grease and flour each individual compartment, but that takes a long time. That's just more time than I want to spend, so we use the paper liners. So now you're just going to use a scoop, or you can use a spoon or whatever, and you're going to fill all of the cupcakes about 2/3 full. You should really try not to get it on the pan, but I am probably one of the messiest cooks, so I do tend to make a mess, but I'll clean it up before it goes in the oven. If you don't clean it up before it goes in the oven, that part could burn, and that might transfer a burn smell to your cupcakes, and you don't want that. All right, so we're just going to keep going. These look so good. I cannot wait till these are done. Oh, really good. And because we added the coffee, it's going to be a more intense flavor. And the mint's going to come in just with the frosting. If you really want more of an intense mint flavor in your cupcakes, you can add a little peppermint extract to the cupcake. But we want to kind of let this chocolate in the cupcake shine. We're going to hold off on that. So now we're going to take our towel, or a paper towel, or whatever, and you're just going to kind of clean up your mess. Try not to bump any of the cupcakes when you're doing this. Alright, almost done. Didn't do too bad once we got going. Alright, I think we're good. Alright, so now we are going to pop these in the oven for, I think 20 minutes. About 15 minutes. So we're going to pop these in the oven for 15 minutes and then we're going to check them. It's a 350-degree oven. Okay, we're back. Our cupcakes, 15 minutes later, they were just about done, so I put them back in for just a couple more minutes until a toothpick comes out clean. So you just stick a toothpick in the center of the cupcake and pull it out, and if there's no batter on it, then the cupcake is done. So, and what I've done is I've taken the cupcakes and I have hollowed out the inside with a melon baller. So they make special tools for this that you can just, you know, it goes in and it pulls out a piece, but this seems to work just fine. So all you do is take your melon baller, go into the middle of the cupcake and scoop some out. So I went ahead and did that for all the cupcakes. So I've got a couple more. So now they all have a hole in the middle. So now we're gonna set these aside to cool a little bit while we make the ganache for the center and we make the frosting for the top. So I'm just gonna pull these over for right now. And all this that's left over that you scooped out, it's just something that you can just eat. Oh, so good. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and make the ganache. What I did while the cupcakes were cooking, I heated up some milk and some instant coffee until it was almost boiling. So I have that here in this pan. Okay, so I'm just gonna give this a little stir. All right, and what it is a half a cup of milk or cream you could use. I have heavy cream this time. I just think that makes a nice rich ganache. And you just heat it up until it's almost boiling. And I added a teaspoon of instant coffee crystals to it when it was cooking. So we're gonna go ahead and pour that in the bowl. And I just made the juice as usual. I told you I'm one of the messiest cooks. So we have that there. So, all right, and then we're gonna take and we're gonna put in, told you. So if you make a mess in your kitchen, just think everybody makes messes in the kitchen. So So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add the chocolate chips. 1 1/4 cups of chocolate chips to the bowl. And we're going to make sure they're all down in the chocolate, in the milk. And we are going to go ahead and let that sit so that the warm milk can melt the chocolate. So we're just gonna set that aside for now. And we'll come back to that when we're done. So now we have the mixer set up with the whisk attachment. If you don't have a KitchenAid mixer, just the 2 beaters is fine. So to this bowl, we are going to add, excuse me, 1 cup of softened butter. We're just going to put that right in here. We have that, and then we have 3/4 cup of butter, and then we are adding to this 1/4 cup of shortening. I just like to do this because it makes it the frosting a little bit lighter than using all butter. You can use all butter if you like it a little richer, but I want it this way. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to mix this up so that the shortening and the butter are kind of incorporated together, and then it gets kind of light and fluffy. So we're just going to let that mix for a minute. You want to make sure that it's nice and creamy and soft. And again, you want to stop and you want to make sure you scrape down your bowl so anything that's creeped up the side of the bowl can get back down into the mixture. And like we have a little rogue piece up here that wasn't getting mixed in, so we're going to get him down. To this mixture, the shortening and the butter mixture. I want to show you what this looks like here. Alright, so this is what it's going to look like. It's a little bit lighter than the butter was, and it's all nice and smooth and creamy. Alright, and to this mixture, we are going to add 4 cups of confectioner's sugar. 1. And it's about 1 pound. So if you have a 1 pound box, that is typically the 4 cups of sugar. I actually have a 2 pound bag here, so I can't just dump it all in. Inhale a little bit of that powdered sugar. 3. Loosen it up a little bit because we don't want it to pack down. All right. And 4. All right, so we have the 4 cups of sugar. Now we are going to add to that a teaspoon of peppermint extract. Oh, it smells so good. It's going to be so good with these cupcakes. All right, so we have 1 teaspoon of peppermint extract. When you buy your extract at the store, make sure you get peppermint. Mint is a little different. It's more spearminty. If you like that flavor, that's fine. But if you're expecting that mint that you think of mint chocolate chip cookies or Andes mints or something, you want the peppermint. All right. And then to that, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of whole milk or cream. All right. And we're going to start this a little bit slow, off and on, so we don't wear the sugar. This is going to take a couple minutes to start getting incorporated, and then we're going to scrape down the bowl. You can see the cloud. I think while we're waiting for that, I'm going to have another little piece of our chocolate cake. So good. So good. Now, when you're mixing this, depending on how cold your butter is, the humidity in the air, sometimes you have to add a little bit more cream or milk to your frosting. We want this a consistency that we can spread it with a piping bag. And I think that's a little too heavy. See how it's kind of chunky, so I want to add just a tiny bit. You don't want to add too much. So we're just going to add about another, maybe a half a teaspoon. And now that the sugar is all incorporated, you can go ahead and let this baby rip. Oh, it smells so good. We're gonna stop and we're gonna scrape down the bowl. See how much better this looks. Go ahead and we're gonna let this mix for a couple minutes. So now our frosting is almost done. We have the nice light consistency. See that? See how it's gotten lighter? The butter has kind of turned almost white. But because this is mint frosting, not ice cream, that's a whole other episode. We're going to add some green food coloring. This is just your typical food coloring that you get at the grocery store. Add this, and we're gonna mix this up until it's in that. Oh, this is pretty. I'll show you. Look at how beautiful that color is. Right, so we want to scrape the bowl down so that we can mix all of this in, and then we're gonna let it mix for another minute or so we can get all the food coloring all incorporated through the whole thing, so we don't have marble. Oh, this looks so pretty. I think you can taste more of the mint when you have the green food coloring. For some reason, it's just your brain tricks you into the mint. All right. So we have our frosting is done. Go ahead and get this off. And remember I told you when we were making the cupcake batter that there'd be some time for licking it later? This is your time. So if you want to lick the beaters, there you go. All right, let's put this over here out of the way. All right. All right, there's your nice green buttercream frosting. All right, that. All right, so now we're gonna check on our ganache. The ganache was just the coffee and the chocolate and the cream. So we're going to give this a good mix. See if we can get all this wonderful chocolate. This is what it's looking like now. It's still starting to come together. So we're just gonna mix, mix, mix until we get the cream all mixed in. All right. Oh, here we go. It's starting to come together. You can see it's now starting a little bit more coming together. All right. This is looking so good. And I want to give a shout out to my son Jeremy. He was the one that came up with the idea of this cupcake. You always see the chocolate brownies or candies that are mint chocolate. And he was just asking, is there any way that we could do a cupcake that was like this? So I started thinking about it. I was like, no, I think we can. So you want to mix it until all of the chocolate bits are all melted. Now, if you don't have chocolate chips and you have a solid bar, you can shave up the chocolate. You know, if it's a good quality chocolate or whatever that you want to add instead of chocolate chips. I just use typical semi-sweet chocolate chips from the bag. This is looking good. All right. This is still nice and warm. This ganache makes a good filling. It makes a good frosting. We added a little bit of the coffee again to enhance the chocolate flavor. Almost done. And as this cools, this will thicken up just a little bit. So if you wanted to wait a little while to put it in your cupcakes, you can. And I might pop this into the freezer for just a couple minutes while we are filling the pastry bag. Or the refrigerator at least. So I'm going to pop this in the fridge. I'll be right back. All right, so now we are going to fill a pastry bag with our green frosting. And the best thing to do when you're doing that is to put the bag over something that way that you can hold it open while you're filling it. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a pitcher. I'm just going to have this end. And I'm just going to take a little bit of the icing in at a time. I'm going to pop it. Come on. And there are some people that can do this with such finesse. I am not one of those people. Decorating has never been my strong suit. I like the baking part of this, but this is fun. It's just never pretty. We're gonna go, you don't want to fill the bag up too much because you want to be able to close it. This isn't working. Let's do this. This will work. All right. Push that down. And you're going to squeeze the top, and you're just going to kind of work it down and get the air out of the. Check it out. There you go, right from the end. All right. And then we're going to go get the ganache. And this is nice. Look at this beautiful chocolateness. Oh, so good. So good. All right. So now we're going to bring the cupcakes back. And we can do two different ways to fill the ganache on the cup for these cupcakes. We can take the spoon and just pour it in, or if you wanted to, you could use a pastry bag and pipe it in. Because our ganache is still pretty warm, I'm going to go ahead and just spoon it in. Okay, if some gets on the end of it, it's okay. And you just want to fill up that hole that you made in the cupcake. And this is just going to be a nice little surprise for people when they bite into the cupcake. It's going to have this delicious center in it. And you can do this with pretty much any cupcake. If you have like a peanut butter cupcake, you can fill it with a strawberry jam. You can have a cinnamon cupcake and fill it up with a maple mousse. That would be kind of good. But there's so many things that you could do, and it's a nice little surprise. You could do chocolate cupcakes and put a fresh raspberry inside. If you take the ganache and we put it in the beater and we whip it up, it will become a pale brown frosting. So this is pretty much very versatile. We are going to take our mint buttercream and we are going to go ahead and decorate the tops. We're going to go out the outside and in and up. Doesn't that look pretty? Can you see that? I'll tell you what, I'll start back here. Doesn't that look pretty? You see this here. Cupcakes is still warm, so they're there. All right. So, and we're just going to do that to finish them. I tend to do a little sound effects when I'm doing this too. All right. We'll do one more, and then we'll add some more frosting to the bag. All right. This is where it gets a little messy, but. All right, I'm going to finish these and I will be back with you when everything's all done and show you how to present these. cupcakes are all done. We have them presented on a plate, and I just topped them with a little bit of chocolate chips for a little bit of extra. And let's take a look and see what this cupcake looks like on the inside. Okay, take it, I'm just going to chop it in half. Oops, I made a mess of that one. Oh, let's see. Mmm. So good. So good. And there you have it. Mint dark chocolate cupcakes with a chocolate ganache filling. Deliciousness. Until next time, bye.